And welcome everyone to another exciting adventure on the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host, Michael, and thank you for joining us in our beginning of season 4. And tonight's episode, I want to share in full transparency one of the topics I have been waiting for years to have a guest to talk about. So I am super excited about it. Plus, she does have some other experiences to share that I am super excited about seeing from her bio. So I am so blessed and honored to have this guest on. And we have been having great conversation backstage. And I realized I made one faux pas. I forgot how to ask to pronounce her last name. So I'm hoping I pronounced this correctly. I am going to turn it over to my awesome, amazing guest, the one, the only, super extraordinaire, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz.
Yep, you got it right on the money.
So, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, and you're probably the very first one, by the way, that nailed that right between the eyes. So good job. We're starting off really well.
Well, you know, I would take a bow, but I think they'd rather hear from you. So why don't you give our audience a little bit of your background and what we'll be talking about tonight?
Well, that's a long background. I think you know that. 12 books in and a couple documentaries been featured on, and working on possibly doing even a film, possibly. It's been cited that or noted that maybe I should be doing a movie about my life history, because with the paranormal and everything, I fell into this a long time ago. I didn't realize it. And I'm in my 60s now. And as I've been able to connect the dots, as you noticed in my biography, I've had many, many experiences. I've had over 100 experiences with what I believe to be the paranormal or spiritual, of course, added in there. And also a firm believer here, a couple of visitations from, the otherworldly. So I have an extensive background that starts all the way back at age 3 to 5. And so feel free to ask away, Michael, and I'll try to fill in some of that space for you.
Well, then, why don't we get started with what I teased that I've been waiting 4 seasons to have on. And that is, what is your experience and what do you think black-eyed children or the black-eyed kids really are?
Well, that is a very good question. Did I have those experiences? I had 2 of them. And one slightly indirect, which I'll talk about in a minute. One which was a more of a older teen / young adult one. And why don't I just start with the first one here? And first question you asked me here is, what do I think that is? That's a really good question. Both experiences lent themselves to different conclusions. So let me explain, and I'll start with the very first one. Okay, so I have volunteered and or worked a night shift, had a few years ago for about a few years in a row at a very, very popular state fair, which is in Minnesota. And my job I was tasked with was to work in be kind of like a manager type position in the horse barn. And for any of you who knows what it's like to be on a state fair grounds, many of us don't realize that they can be rather haunted. And the Minnesota State Fairgrounds is known to be haunted at times with various energies that have hung around for a long time. But in this particular case, this energy, we don't think was someone who committed suicide on the property or died on the property. This one probably showed up and we don't know how it did. So let me explain the story. So I'm working in the horse barn, and one of the things that I did, and along with others, of course, is that we watched over $1 million horses. And of course, they compete, obviously. And so being on the midnight shift, you have to make sure that none of your horses die and nothing funny goes on and that you don't have intruders in the building and the whole 10 yards. Well, it was just before the shift mine was about to start. I was there. I was on the property and in the premises in the office. And we hand out keys to the competitors so they can take their showers, get ready for the next morning because they're up rather early and getting their horses ready and all that sort of thing. And it just so happens that a woman came to the counter, and she was saying, you know what, there's a kid in my shower room. Now, keep in mind that we try to keep the doors locked at all times and try to avoid anyone that might inadvertently slip in, because that's how popular it is. You get in line and you wait for your name to be called. So, of course, we said, me and another gal, that's impossible. The door's locked. No one has been in there for hours. What are you talking about? So we go, not I, but I sent the coworker back with the woman to see what this kid was all about. They opened up the door, and there was actually a boy about, I would say, age maybe 20, maybe something like that. And he was just standing there in the shower room doing nothing, but kind of in a trance-like mode. And so that kind of freaked them out initially, and they asked him to come out. All right. So he comes out, and they have him positioned. They brought him around to where the office was, and there was a pillar. And he was standing by the pillar with his head down like this. Okay. And he did have the typical brown hair, short, bangs over the eyes. You know, you couldn't see his eyes. That was one thing that was very noticeable. And he was in kind of a somber, trance-like position. All right. And so they're questioning him. How did you get into the shower room? Where did you come from? You know, all this. And he wouldn't answer. He just stood there looking kind of at the floor, and he was just unresponsive, standing up against the pillar. All right. Long story short, a competitor was bringing their horse. They need to walk him down in the direction where he was standing next to the pillar. The horse got probably within 15 feet, took one look at this kid who was standing there in a trance-like mode, unresponsive, just kind of weird, and they weren't getting a peep out of him. And the horse all of a sudden starts to yelp and back up and scream, and the handler was trying to get a hold of this horse and try to calm it down, and couldn't figure out why when it was looking at this kid, it would freak out so badly. Now, for those of you who understand animal behavior, animals usually do have a sense that we don't always pick up on. And so it was reacting, but it was reacting in a way that was terrified. All right. So in the meantime, the handler's trying to get a hold of the horse because it's freaking out. The woman who discovered the boy is standing there kind of delirious. My coworker is standing there looking at this kid. And as soon as the horse started to back up, she turned and she looked at the horse backing up. She turned back towards the kid. The kid raised his head up. His bangs went back. I don't know what he did, but he probably brushed them back a little bit. His eyes went open. He started to grin, and his teeth were like nails, razor sharp nails. And I forgot to send you a picture of what this kid looked like in an illustrative manner. It's actually of a girl, but it was identical to what this boy looked like. And then he started to grin and his eyes kind of shifted. And my coworker backed up like that because she just couldn't believe what she was seeing. The horse was freaking out again. She turned back in that direction. And the minute that she turned back to look back at the kid, he was gone. He disappeared in thin air. Now, what they did was they still wanted to talk to this kid because that was creepy, weird, and the whole thing just went on in seconds, that it was like some horror movie playing out in front of a person's eyes. So they ran. So we were by the opening of the building. They went out. They tried to see which direction the kid was going because there was no place to hide. And he was gone. He just disappeared. So she came into the office, of course, and was just tormented. And she just couldn't put herself back together. She said it was the creepiest, scariest thing she ever saw in her life. Then when he disappeared like that, she thought, oh my God, what on earth did I just encounter? And now keep in mind, I became known as the paranormal girl. And yes, the barn was haunted. Yes, I've had experiences in that barn. And so I tried to console her and to have her shake it off. But I thought about that experience, the darker eyes, the hair, the somber, the unresponsiveness, the nail-like teeth, not just teeth, nail-like teeth, the grimace, the grin that makes a person just so spooked out, and then and the horse reacting and the whole 10 yards. So people wonder, was that a black-eyed kid? Was that something that took possession of someone? The only question that would come to mind in that particular case would be, if something took possession of that person, which I'm going to get into the second one in a moment, that kid would have been still existing and not disappearing like poof. And how he ended up in the shower room, we'll never know because the door was locked. We didn't have anyone go in there for hours, and he was just standing in there still unresponsive. We have no idea how that all occurred. But I can tell you, Michael, it did shake up everybody so badly that, things do happen. People just are so busy and distracted. They don't often realize when weird things like that happen, how to handle it, what to do, how to think about that. So before I get into my second story, did you have a question, or does anyone have a question about that situation?
Well, two things that stood out to me with that experience was, one is when we hear the lore of the black-eyed children or kids, we call them kids because they look like they're elementary school kids. So the fact that he was in his 20s has gotten me unnerved because I'm like, crap, do these kids come in all ages now? Do we need to keep an eye out for, new terms for?
Yep. Yes, that's exactly right. You're brilliant. That's exactly correct. Because now I'm going to tell you the one that I went face to face with, which to this day, it's interesting when you're in the. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Before you get to the second one, the one thing I wanted to ask, that the second thing that stuck out in my mind is he's in the bathroom shower. So did he know somebody was going to be coming and was waiting for them? Or did he just happen to end up in the showers, manifested there? Or what was there before?
Nothing.
So, yeah, those were the backup questions that I had, was like, wait, why is he in this particular area? What was there? Who's he waiting for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I can tell you one thing. One of the theories that went on, which I think I'm going to have to discount. There was across the road, there's the cattle barn. And there was a young 18 to 20-year-old that actually hung himself in the cattle barn years prior. Not too much, not too long. Maybe let's just go up to maybe 5 to 8 years prior. So he committed suicide in the cattle barn, and he was a young kid. There was also notice by a security person that when they were in the grandstand area and they could see a kid, a young boy, no, I mean young, I'm talking 18 to 20, sitting at the top in a very empty grandstand, sitting at the top, just staring out as if the kid was just watching what was the world go by or go on. So the one thing that I had started to do research on regarding this was, could this have been the cattle barn kid? You know, what was he wearing? Was he wearing the same clothes that he killed himself in? Did he have brown hair? Was it short at the time? You know, see, these are the things that I couldn't ever get my finger on. However, there is a possibility, but the next story will crawl up your spine. So I don't know. Did he manifest in there? He had to have, because the horse barn is literally monitored, literally 24/7. Literally. That's what I was there for, the graveyard shift, watching over everybody, the horses, people that might have stayed at the fair past 12 o'clock midnight. And that's when my little experience face to face came with something that might be even more interesting. So yes, what was this kid? Was it the kid who killed himself? Was it something that took possession of something? Did he manifest? And most importantly, did he manifest into a body that most of us would not think about at the time? But I can guarantee one thing. The horse was so freaked out. My coworker was so beside herself, she could hardly bear it. And it was like, you know, well, what do you say? Yeah, weird stuff happens. And I have had experiences in the horse barn. Being paranormal, like, they always come to me. They come to me in smells. They come to me in sounds, the whole 10 yards. Do you want to hear the one that I had now? Are you ready for that one?
I have a theory that I want to ask you first around the boy who committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't really know what the black-eyed feature is. So could it possibly be the kid who committed suicide because he obviously was distraught that whatever the black-eyed is took over his spirit, and that's why he is there?
Well, there's a possibility of that. Very true. And the other question that goes on that someone would normally also ask along with what you just brought up, what color were his eyes? His eyes were brown. And in the moment of fear and everything, those brown eyes probably become browner, right? And but I agree with you. These presences that are, and it's not just this fair, it's everywhere. It's in a lot of places that bring about a lot of energy. This fair, by chance, is number 1, number 2 in the entire United States. We are like a human battery. So I've had every report you can imagine. I've had EMTs work alongside of me, you know, doing this as a part-time thing. Okay. And they would share their stories of, for an example, just watching the crowd walk by. And then one day there's this old woman that looks kind of like a homeless woman walking by, except there was one issue. She had no legs. Okay. So she's floating by. All right. And he's like, oh my God. And these are the things that people that are really sensitive or have the ability to pick up on details that others do not recognize, aren't part of, or whatever. But a human battery that brings a lot of people together in these situations can create on certain days and environments manifestations that a lot of people just they don't think about. You know, what do you think about when you go to the fair? What am I going to eat? You know, am I going to be exhausted by the end of the day? You know, our fair is very, very popular for everything. So you're exhausted. You're not thinking about running into. I did do some research once. I did find out that, well, if this is true for theory, in about 100 to 200 people in a group like that, let's say you're walking down an alleyway or whatever, there's usually 2 in that group that could be apparitions of some sort. But people don't know this. I mean, I've walk along all kinds of people. You don't look and go, are you a ghost? That kind of thing. No. But that's what the theory kind of can go is with these big groups and crowds, that usually in a big crowd, there's usually a couple that are hanging about and enjoying. We got a woman. There's a woman that was at the bandstand, and she died, but she would always be seen sitting in her seat, watching a performance, always, every single year, same seat, every single year. And that came from somebody who was also as sensitive, who recognized and could always pick this up. So lots of really interesting things. So sorry, a little off track, but I was just trying to bring out the human battery experience here.
Oh no, and I'm excited to hear this second experience.
Okay, so after the first one occurred, I thought that was going to be the end of weird stuff happening in the building. No, it wasn't weird. This one is even weirder. All right. So I'm by myself. Yep, in the office and doing my thing. And we have undercovers that do come in. They go through the whole fair to find the ones that want to sleep under the buildings at night or sleep here or there or whatever. And they got to fetch them and get them out of there, get them out of the fairgrounds. And so they came in. They usually slept in the horse barn, very safe place to sleep. And one of the undercovers came up to my window and he says, "We got a problem." And I said, "Oh God, why did I have to be here and have the problem, right? What's the problem?" He says, "We've got an intruder." What do you mean we have an intruder? Now, keep in mind, this is after midnight, about 1:30 in the morning. The fair is closed. Everybody should be out. The people that are still drunk and they're fetching them to try to get them out, or hiding under the buildings and hiding in front loaders, you name it, they're hiding everywhere. They're finding them and getting them out of there. Okay. But it just so happens that this night it was raining cats and dogs. And I mean raining cats and dogs. Okay. So the undercover comes up to me and says, "We have a problem." I said, "Oh, what's the problem?" "We had an intruder." "How do you know he's an intruder?" He goes, and he's talking really weird. He's talking really weird. Like, what is he saying to you? Okay. So I'm still there. He comes into the office. This is the undercover. And he starts to say these things like this: "I'm sleeping in the aisle over there. Yeah. It's roped off. It's in a horse aisle. It's roped off. So, and I'm sleeping in this chair. And all of a sudden I wake up and there's this thing, or the shadow of this body, just standing right in front of me." Freaked me out. Okay, freaked you out. Don't know. So he climbed over the rope, obviously, and he wanted to ask you a question. Or something's weird about him. I go, "What makes him weird?" He goes, "He was asking questions that made absolutely no sense." I can't remember the exact statement that he said, but it was something along the lines of this. "Can you tell me why there's hay in this building?" Okay, now keep in mind, we're in a horse building. There's hay and there's all kinds of stuff like that, right? And feed. And yet you have a kid sitting there going, "Why is there hay in this building?" Or something like, why is it that this is acting this way? So he's talking like he's about 24 to 26. That's about where I'd put him. All right. So now the guy gets up casually from it. He goes, "I don't know how to help you. I'll be right back." That's when he drags himself to the front window, tells me that this kid is acting up. He's weird. And I'm watching now this kid literally walk down the aisle, looking into all of the horse bins or their
The stalls.
Yeah, stalls. Thank you. I can't. My head's down for the count for tonight, and I'm thinking to myself, going, no one's supposed to be in here. Competitors are in here. Is he a competitor? Maybe he looks like he's making his way to the bathroom. Okay, no, doesn't look like someone I recognize as a competitor. So then I said to the guy, "Wait right here. And if this kid does anything to me, would you come out and help me?" So then I go out there. I have to be queen of the day, right? And I'm nervous because we've got this kid who's 24 to 26 wandering down the aisle, looking into all the stalls like he's looking at something new for the very first time. Like, wow, look at this animal. Like, really weird. All right. So I approached the kid. First, I said a prayer to myself. Then I approached the kid. I said, can I help you? I said, do you realize that the fair is closed and no one is supposed to be in this building? He goes, he just stood there and he just kind of looked at me. Once again, short hair. But what was weird about this was that he was wearing sunglasses on his head and he was bone dry and it was raining cats and dogs outside. So he should have been at the minimal, at least wet to some degree, which told us that he had been in that building for at least long enough to either dry off or something really weird was going on. All right, so now I'm starting to notice this, and I'm like practically face to face with this guy. And what went on in my head was, please, whatever happens, don't touch me. This is what was kind of going on in. So this is what he starts to say. I need to get into your office. Why do you need to get into my office? I can't allow anyone in there. I need you to invite me into your office. I need you to bring me into your office. Why do you need to get into my office? There's no reason why you have to get into my office. No one's allowed in there but me. No, I need you to be, my friends are going to show up and pick me up somewhere here. Oh, really? It's 1:30 in the morning. The gates are locked and closed. And so I'm telling myself, holy crap, I'm standing face to face with a black-eyed something, because that's the language that the black-eyed kids use. I need you to invite me to get into your office. Please let me into your office. No. So it got really weird. So the undercover starts to walk out of the office and he's walking toward us. And I'm looking at this kid. I'm trying to smell if he's got alcohol on his breath, if anything is coming out of him. I'm looking at his eyes and I'm like, holy crap, I just don't turn black. That's all I kept thinking to myself is don't turn black. And I kept thinking to myself, sunglasses, bone dry, asking weird questions. This kid is under some kind of unusual possession, or if not possession, he's under something. All right. Something has taken a hold of him. So the undercover comes up and I said, oh, hi. Yeah, no, we're just chatting. Yeah, no problem here. I said, you wait right here. I'll be right back. Okay. So I bring the security or the undercover kind of back a little bit. And I said to him, call the cop. Make it quiet. We need to sting this guy. Get him out of here. He is off his rocker. I don't know what planet he's on, but he's not from this planet. So in the next 10 minutes, he got the cop to come through the back door. I explained it to the cop. The kid wasn't supposed to be in there. He kept asking to come into the office, blah, blah, blah. I dragged the kid down to a bench to have him sit down, literally just calmly. The cop car went around and blocked him. And it took the cop literally over 15 minutes to convince the kid to get into the cop car. But then I figured out where the kid came from. It had bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. So right next to the horse building is the carnival. The carnival people are not allowed. They're not allowed to leave the carnival area. They're not allowed to go into any building. They're not allowed to wander off. They're not allowed anything. And I don't exactly know what happened, but my friends are going to come and get me. Can I come into your office? I need you to invite me in, all this sort of thing, right? And then I realized what I was looking at. Years ago, I used to win stuffed animals for sick children at hospitals. And I was very competitive on the midway. And this kid used to run the carnival water balloon stand. And I thought, oh my God, I know this kid. I used to play the water balloon game all the time. And so then I started wondering, he's been at this fair for a long time, but he's out of his damn mind. Excuse my French. Didn't mean to swear there. But it's just like he was just so weird. And so anyway, I started researching more about not only just black-eyed kids, but black-eyed adults, black-eyed whatever, or not even black-eyed. Something that managed to seep right through his little body, because he knows the fair. He knows everything. How weird to actually come face to face with the very person that you used to win stuffed animals from, but they're complete. And he sounded, by the way, different. I tried to remember back to when he was like doing the game. And I'm like, no, that wasn't even his voice. It was someone else's voice. And so it was more childlike, more innocent, more very, very simple. And that wasn't him at all. So the cop took him away. I did not go on to the Midway to see if he returned or was returned. Chances are likely they couldn't figure out what to do with him either. And I don't know. To this day, I have no idea what happened to him. But now we can talk about whether or not it's possible for things to slip into people. Bone dry, weird talking, never talked like that before. Very interesting.
Well, and what's even more interesting is they picked somebody you knew and would remember, and that he knew exactly where you were. So it really starts to make you wonder, were they coming to you? And I almost wonder, because you weren't fully present for the first encounter.
Wow.
They were like, oh, well, she missed out, so let's give her her own encounter, and brought to you your own encounter.
Yep. And it was about as black-eyed as you could ever imagine. And to this day, I think back to that moment and I think to myself, oh my God, what else is roaming on this fairgrounds? Because I have had numerous, I'd have to go and make sure all the horses were okay. There would be bangs that came from places that were not horses. They were not echoes of anything else. They were obvious, like, hi, I'm in this stall. Look at me. There would be smells. Now that barn used to be a airplane part making place years ago. And so the cigarette smells and stuff like that wouldn't even surprise me if someone got hurt in there, killed in there, and they were just sitting there smoking away. And then I walk right through it because there was nobody that was smoking in that barn. It's yes. And am I a beacon? Yes, I'm a beacon. Do they come to me? All the time. They come all the time. Am I afraid of them? Depends on the context. But a lot of them aren't out to scare me. They just want to make themselves known to me. So, yeah.
Well, and the thing that I think people often forget, because they get caught up in the fear of seeing them, that there is one interesting rule that the black-eyed children have to follow, and you kind of hinted at it, is you have to invite them in.
That's correct.
They can't cross a threshold. They're almost like the vampire lore.
That's
they
correct.
They can't enter without permission. So if you're watching and you think you are dealing with a black-eyed children or a black-eyed kid or anything that's black-eyed and it asks permission, the answer is no.
That's right. And not only that, I knew the minute he threw that out, and he sounded in a childlike manner, I knew I wasn't dealing, once I put all the pieces together, I knew I wasn't dealing with the guy that I always dealt with on the carnival, at his station. That was not his voice. That was a childlike kind of simplistic kind of thinking and asking questions that are just so obvious and he's been on this property for how many years, at this fair, and he's asking questions that are like, hello, you know what I mean? It's just like, who just took possession? I don't know if possession's even the right word. I know I have things slip in and out of me periodically, depending on where I am, and I take on a kind of like the essence of them, and I kind of speak for some of these things. So I've been down that road. I'm not sure possession's the right channeled. I think channeled is the right word that I'm looking for here. And yeah, he definitely was channeled by something, and that something was not of his age, and that something was not of his should be present mindset. Very, very strange. Yeah. But do not, you ever have a situation like that, do not invite, bring, shut your door, walk away, do whatever you have to do. I couldn't. I had $1 million horses at my presence and my stake. I couldn't do anything but. So at the year after, I did not go back. I decided that what was happening is that I seemed to beaconize to the point where everything wanted to now start to visit Kelly in the horse barn. And I made the decision that I was not going to go back because of that. Not because I was scared, but because I now saw a pattern that it's like, Kelly's in the barn, Kelly's here. And then things just naturally gravitate and try to come in. So
right. And somebody else could answer the other way and be harmed. And
yeah,
I know if I was in your shoes, I'd feel responsible.
I was responsible. Yeah. And to get the cop, we had to sting him. It was hard for me to sting someone and try to mislead them a little bit to capture them. I couldn't risk having them run. It was still raining cats and dogs. He was still giving the same BS to that. And it took a while to get him convinced to get into the cop car, but he did, he managed. But I'm telling you, weird situation. So yeah, really weird.
That was the other thing that caught my interest with both experiences is one was in the rain, which we all hear is the telltale sign is when it's raining, they're going to show up.
Yeah.
But the first experience was no rain.
No rain.
And so it's like, that's like those moments where as an investigator, you're like, do we have to throw the playbook out because everything is starting to fall apart in this book? And how do we defend against something that is now defying all the known rules that we think they're supposed to be following? So,
well, one of the things too that you bring up is the playbook. I always thought black-eyed kids were young, from 13 to maybe 17, or even younger. Could even be younger, 4 to whatever. But the black eyes would give them away. I had no idea that whatever this thing was that sounded black-eyed to me and had completely the language of black-eyed, completely down to an art. He didn't do that on purpose. He was serious. And so that's what the playbook, I don't know what is really inside of a black-eyed kid. Is it I hate to use the word demon, what is it? And so I don't know. I have no answers. I can't pull it out of these things, and to disappear, poof, like that. And they're gone, and the horse freaking out and all that sort of thing. Animals are pretty good when it comes to their radar too, so
the word that keeps coming to my mind is mimic. Is either it was mimicking a black-eyed or the black-eyeds are mimics. It took me by surprise. And actually, after he was gone, I spent the rest of my evening researching some more black-eyed kid stories, black-eyed not traits, but some things that might lead you to believe that you're dealing with something of that nature, because that's how we had defined it and categorized it. I don't know. I think you can move that now into something more adultish, but he was probably no more than 26 years old. I would put him probably between 24 to 26, and he's been with the carnival for a while.
So yeah, I'd say that's about right. So
Yeah, wow. It's almost like, how do you top that in experiences? And yet you have two more experiences that jumped out at me in your bio that I was like, man, I would be miffed if I couldn't get these on the show. And one of them is something that's actually fairly new. And that is almost getting ran over by a driverless car.
yep, just as you hear it, everybody. So let me tell you the short story of that one. So my husband and I went to Belgium and the Netherlands a few months ago over the summer, and this actually evolves to another piece, which I think you'll find interesting. So we went to visit his uncle who served in World War II in the Hitler War, and was fighting against the Hitler and his group. Okay. And so we went to visit his uncle in the Henry Chappelle Cemetery. There's like 9,000 soldiers in there from all over. And so let's start there, because this is where it gets kind of weird and interesting. All right. So I'm talking to the headstone, and this is the second visit now that I've had with his uncle, my husband's uncle. And at the point that we were going to leave, I put my hand out on the tombstone, and I actually sizzled, like electrified, like shock, like boom, like that. And I thought, oh my God. And so my husband was about a block away at this point. And I said, oh, I just had a shock. I was trying to tell him to stop so I could say, oh my God, your uncle's thing just shocked me. All right. So we left there. I was explaining to my husband, I just got stunned by his uncle. I said, maybe he was actually there today. I said, I don't know. This was our second visit. We went the next day to a World War II museum in the Netherlands, Arnhem. And Arnhem is well known for that war. He didn't fight in Arnhem. He fought somewhere else. And basically, in a nutshell, we went through the museum, and there's thousands of artifacts in there. We got to what they call their gift shop, which is nothing more than a shop of things that he purchased from the opposition a few years back, and he put them in a case and called it a gift shop, and my husband and I, just before we were about to leave, we were looking at this case, and my eye caught this harmonica. And it's just like, why am I looking at this harmonica? This is so weird. All right. Anyway, I bought my husband said, don't buy that. And I said, I don't know. I said, I've got to buy it. It's telling me to buy it. I don't know why. It's telling me to buy this harmonica. I don't know, but it's from the opposition. I know. It's so weird. And then I looked at the storekeeper and said, I do have to fly back 8 hours, to the United States. Hopefully the plane won't crash, and ha, 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 that kind of thing. Well, out the door I went with this harmonica, and I just couldn't get my hands and my eyes off of it. All right. Next day. So first we have the sizzle at the tombstone. Then I'm mesmerized, and I'm taken back by this harmonica by the opposition. And so I've got this and all this. Okay, we are in Brussels, walking down the corridor, and we were turning around to go back to the hotel for just a moment when all of a sudden I heard like a yelp. All right. And to my left, there's a hotel, and anyone who's been in these places know how tight there's no room for cars. Anyway, there were two cars that resembled taxis and one that was approaching. And so I heard this yelp. And so I turned, looked to the left, and this guy was trying to get into this car. The door was open, but the car was like jolting, and then it started to rev. Rum, rum, rum. And I thought, what the heck? And so I'm looking at this and going, the car's revving, but he's not inside of it yet. And there was 2 women, I think, also inside of it at the time, and they weren't revving it. It was just, that's what was going on. So now the car starts to move. Now keep in mind that I'm in the path of the nose of the car, and in front of it was I'll call it a taxi or an Uber. There was a car sitting in front of it. Rum, rum. And so the guy is like holding the door, trying to get in, and it starts to move. And then what it did is he's holding on to it. He's now being dragged. It hits the back end of the car in front of it, kind of like it took on a human personality, and kind of like it was like, get out of my way. You know, it was like a get out of my way kind of thing. It was so weird. And I'm watching this, and I'm seeing the guy, and he's screaming now, and the thing's room. And then it hit what sounded to me like about 85 miles an hour. I'm going to stick to that because it was really revved fast. And then it shot off like a rocket right at me. Now, I was in the path. My husband was right in front of me by a foot. I was behind him. I'm noticing this. Everyone else is behind or in front. And here's this car, and it's like it wanted to run me over. It was like it had a human personality and a mind of its own. And so what I heard when it was like he was screaming, he was being dragged, the thing revved really loud, it was shooting off. I heard in the back of my head, run. And something pushed me, and I pushed my husband, and we went to the side of a wall, and the thing smashed at full speed into this historic building that was like, on the other side of me. Literally cracked the entire window, literally bent the building. Can you imagine the expense? I yelled before it hit the wall, don't look, it's going to explode. Don't look. Okay, so what happened then? 4 airbags went off. Boom, 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 just like gunshots. Boom, 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 smash, rum, and it just silence. And of course, then everyone's all, they all run because they didn't know what the heck happened. The man actually managed to get into the car as it smashed into the building. And so they were checking on him. 2 women got out. They were all frantic, the whole 10 yards. I turned around and I said, what just happened here? I said to my husband, that thing took on a human personality like it wanted to kill me. Anyway, I ended up in a movie because of this, by the way, everyone. But anyhow, but it gets even more interesting. It did not end up in the papers. They kept everything out. It was completely quiet, but gets interesting now. So we're all shaken up. My husband and I get on a hop on bus just to try to shake it off because we couldn't function after the fact. I just sat there and said, oh my God, I just had something that had no driver try to run me over. All right. So then let's fast forward 2 months. When I was at the grave of my husband's uncle, I said to him, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to come back and see you again. I wanted to wish you well. I wish we could take you back with us. I really wish I knew how you died, where you died, and the whole 10 yards. Right now, as I speak to you, God is my witness. Nobody knew the questions I asked of his uncle. My husband received from an unknown person, but he gave his name, of course, in an email 2 months later with a folder of his uncle. How he died, where he died, what he died with, what he was wearing, all these artifacts, this and that, what his dad picked up at the time back in the States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How he was buried actually twice. And my husband was all shaken. He said, I don't know this man. I said, nobody knows that I asked these questions. And this folder with all this information came to answer my questions. And if you remember, I sizzled and I asked these questions. But isn't it strange that nobody would know this at all except my husband and me, and we never talked to anybody, and all of a sudden the folder with all the answers came right to him from a guy in Kansas, by the way, whose grandfather was his best friend during that war. His grandfather lived, but he died. And so I think that between the personless car and all of a sudden getting stuff that nobody knew except me and the tombstone and, and whatever, that lends itself to the questions of, can we really explain some of these things that happen in our lives? And so there you have it. So
not only that, but I'm kind of curious. Did you have the harmonica on you?
Oh, I didn't have the harmonica on me, but I can tell you, I'll tell you about that harmonica. So I left the harmonica alone, but I really held on to it. I mean, like I really was intrigued by it. When I was being filmed for a movie that's not out yet, and I was telling my story, I brought the harmonica up to my office, like I'm talking to you right now, and I was trying to show it off, and the thing went completely active. It went completely like, I don't want to do this, like, and the energy off of it was so intense and so strong that I could hardly contain myself doing the interview. And I kept showing it, but I was so emotional that I broke down. And it was because, so the harmonica was not on me at the time, but the energy of it was definitely on me. And I don't know, it was the opposition, that is true, but who pushed me, who yelled to get out of the way? Was it something of the opposition that was noticed by something in the personless car? Because that was strange. And like I said, they kept it out of the papers and everything. That was so bizarre. It took on, like I said, the human personality. But the harmonica does not like to be touched. I did take a picture of it. I bring it to conferences with me. And would you believe that even when I show the picture of the harmonica, I could tell you the story of the Annabelle situation that I just went through at a conference where, once again, things are just so interested in me and my life that they will come right to me. But anyway, that's another story, another time. But yeah, it's the harmonica does not want to be touched. So it's behind glass in my house. And it's kind of interesting. So I just kind of leave it alone.
Yeah, because I was getting the feeling like, we think of during war, both sides hated each other.
Yeah.
But then we have moments like, I think it was it 1912, the Christmas Treaty, where they stopped fighting for Christmas and shared and like were comrades. And then we're like, I'm sorry that when we wake up the next day, we're back to fighting each other, but, at least we'll have this little truce that we, shared for the holidays, that possibly the person who had that harmonica didn't really believe in what was going on and was like, here's a chance to atone. Let me save this person who took an interest in me so I can have sort of a little atonement.
Well, and I did ask the question. I did. Who saved me? Who saved me? I saved my husband. I mean, something pushed me and said, run and all this sort of thing. Something saved me. So I saved my husband. It was not just a natural instinct. Most people say, well, your instinct is to run. No, it wasn't. I was too immobilized watching this guy being dragged by this car and with nobody in it. He couldn't get in there. It was like, and watching it take on such a human personality. That's the thing that people can't believe. There's only one other person I know of that has had a truck or something attempt to run her over. That was Lorraine Warren. And she used to, and I don't know her whole story, but she talked about the time that there was a personless trucker, whatever, that tried to run her over and came right after her. And then when I shared my story, someone brought that to my attention, and it's very interesting. So yeah, very interesting.
That is. And We're actually 4 minutes from the hour. Do you have time for one more?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I have time.
This one is something that is rather unique, and I don't know if you actually get asked about this a lot. And that is the mantis being encounter.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So I hope, do you want me to try to do it in 4 minutes, or should I just tell the story?
Tell the story. We have time if you have time.
Oh, I have days. Okay. So, let's see, where do I start? So I lived in a different house at the time, my previous home, and I was having a lot of experiences in the house. Everything from otherworldly experiences to and serious ones to lots of paranormal. And so what happens with me is that I'm in my 5th home now. And when I feel like a home is becoming too entertained by the otherworldly or paranormal or whatever it might be, it obviously starts to act up. And I say, it's time for me to leave and go. So I built the house that I'm currently in right now to try to explore whether or not I'm causing this stuff or whether or not this stuff remains to still come to me. And the answer is it's still coming to me. Let's go back to what happened that day. Was in my office. I'm a workaholic. I was in there till about 2 a.m. Decided to give it up, for the night. Went to bed. Probably was not in bed more than 10, 15 minutes when all of a sudden, didn't hear anything, but I certainly smelled something. And it was kind of a wretched, perfumey, musty type of smell. And it's just wretched. Okay. And I turned over and I looked at my husband, who was sleeping intensely at the time. And I said to myself, I need to talk to him tomorrow about what shampoo he's using or whatever, because it is absolutely ungodly. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. You're always going to get the rap. All right. Never a woman smelling awful, only the man. Okay. So anyway, so I put the covers over my nose because I couldn't stand it anymore. It was horrible. All right. But didn't see anything. But keep in mind, I have had otherworldly experiences in that bedroom that I know of. Okay, so anyway, next day I get up, it's like, drag yourself out of bed, go to the bathroom. And I looked in the mirror, and right here, right where my hand is, upside down, long fingers, but one was very crooked and very prominent crooked, was an embedded purple reddish handprint. And I looked in the mirror like that and I thought, oh my God, where did that come from? So I just immediately started walking downstairs and I went to my husband and I said, there's a handprint on my body. And he just looked like, I didn't touch you. Yeah, well, I wish you would once in a while. Anyway, putting that aside, ladies, I know how you feel out there. Once in a while wouldn't be so bad. Okay, so anyway, I said, where did this come from? Oh my God, there's a handprint embedded on my, oh my God. And then I started telling him about the smell and everything. And I said, you know what? Before I went to sleep and all that, I had this horrible smell. Okay, so I started researching handprints on people's bodies. I could only find one article or one blog or something where there was like 900 to 1,000 reported. But can you imagine the number of handprints that have literally been on people's backs, their thighs, their arms, every place? Mine was right here. And by the way, I need to preface this. I had COVID so badly. I almost died twice. I passed out and went blacked out once. And I had COVID pneumonia here, and I had regular pneumonia here. I had to go to a lung specialist. It took me 8 months to get over COVID. It was that bad. All right. The handprint was right here. Now, I have to tell you something. I was told from my lung therapist, they said, you know what? that COVID pneumonia, it's like a little cement system in there. It's got to break up and it's got to come out on its own. So I had to use a spirometer and try to get it out. And they said it's going to take a long time, months, could even be a few years. And I'm like, oh God, that's where the handprint was located. Now, fast forward. So I'm researching handprints and all that sort of thing. I'm researching, abductions and you name it. And then I started asking the universe the question, or not question. I started begging the universe. Could someone please tell me who put that handprint on me? So at every conference that I talk about this handprint, I've had psychics say, it's a succubus. It's an old woman's hand. It's a this, it's a that, it's, 5 different things. But one guy said it's an alien and one person said it's a mantis being. And I thought, okay. And so then we started talking about it. I had a dream a year and a half later. And in the dream, this is what happened. Young woman, looked like 28 to me, walking away from me in my dream. She had pants on, she had long brown hair. But then she started to slowly turn around. And the minute she looked at me, black COVID mask, huge gray, could be a gray too, by the way, eyes or mantis eyes, down the middle like this. I found a picture on the internet that actually kind of looked like her, but I paired it with a gray, okay? And as soon as it turned around, and I recognized what I was looking at, which was not a human being, I freaked out. I woke up. I was completely in sweat. I was full of sweat. My heart was beating out of my chest. And I started screaming out loud, do not ever, ever, ever show up to me like that ever again. So then I had a discussion with the psychic about it. And he said, Kelly, black COVID mask? Yes, way to break it down. Yes, big eyes? Sounds mantis to me. Could have been a gray, though. And he said, they're healers. They're not there to hurt you. Maybe some are. They're healers. Where did it end up? Right here, right over where my COVID pneumonia was, like it had to be sucked out for years. He said, Kelly, how are you now? Healed. It's not in there anymore. It's gone. I have had miraculous healings. That's only one of many, a few. I'm not going to say many. One of a few that I've had where something had a divine intervention of some sort, some energy that cannot be explained, that all of a sudden I'm healed. To this day, I will stick by the gray and or mantis theory with that because I've never seen it since, never seen, nothing's come to me since or whatever. I'm healed. Very strange. And the handprint, by the way, stayed on my body for 3 hours and then went poof like that and disappeared. It didn't just drift away and dissolve and disappear. It just disappeared. So that's my story. And it wasn't the shampoo after all. And I will never really know what it was, but the crooked finger, long fingers, crooked, the closest I could come to was a mantis finger on that or a digit. But who is to say that a gray might not have a crooked finger as well? So that's the story.
True. And I will say, as you were describing it, I was like, yeah, I think the mantis was there to heal you based on where everything happened. And then I started thinking about something interesting that we were talking about before we went live, and that was that you had experiences when you were 4, and then it was like 7 to 9, and then nothing in your 20s, and then 30s, 40s, 50s to today. And I started thinking about that and going, not only is that sequential and in period time, but could that be a building block? Because you call yourself a beacon, and so each one of those experiences were building your awareness and your preparedness for what's happening now.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back and I start thinking about how I became telepathic, psychokinetic, clairvoyant to some degree, clairsentient, definitely, clairgustance, clairsensitive, the whole thing, all the clairs. I was being prepared for these moments, and that is exactly right. Would I have been able to have handled it during those times? I don't know, because I wasn't intellectually on top of this stuff, because I fell into this over my life. I used to work in law and be a college professor, and then all of a sudden this, I just fell. It all started with the book, because I couldn't take not sharing my experiences anymore, and I was getting tired of people telling me it was all in my imagination, or you're making this stuff up, or whatever. No, I was never making it up. I could not figure out what I was going through. And then now there's nothing that's going to convince me otherwise. I know exactly what happened in those periods of time, and I know exactly where my gifts lie to this day. And I don't think I'm done yet, because I keep having experiences, and they're very interesting, but they come when they want to. And a lot of times I'm not afraid anymore, because they're not meant to scare me, but it's more like intrigue, like interesting. I need to really think about who just did that. Spiritual, paranormal, otherworldly, whatever, what did that, and to try to fill in the extra piece. So,
And one thing other that I noticed when I heard your verbiage in the mantis story was, I think you knew it was there to help without knowing it, because
yeah,
most people, when they see or sense something present, they say, "Get out. You're
yeah,
not welcome here." Your response was, "Don't show yourself like that again."
right.
Like, wait a minute. That's kind of an inviting statement. And if you were like freaking out, why are you inviting it back?
Mm. Well, the thing is that I was so terrified. When I woke up, I was surprised, full of sweat, right? It's like, oh my God. Now, a woman would say, oh, you're of the age, you're having a hot flash. That was not a hot flash. Okay. I know the difference, for God's sakes. I've been around long enough. But I will tell you, I was terrified. Other things that have happened in there, I have woken up in that same bedroom and without my clothes on, and down at the end of the bed and sitting nicely on a chair. I have heard, like Star Trek, where you go here in, like on the, where they go, beam me up, Scotty, like
Right.
that noise. One night I heard that, and it wasn't the furnace or anything. Nothing was on at the time. Okay. And I looked up and I said, oh, dear God, if it's anything, just don't open up my ceiling and don't abduct me. I have been picked and picked up, potentially, or kicked up, and then bouncing on a bed in California, near it was in Groveland by I can't remember. It's there's a hotel next to Yosemite, and so I had that situation where the elements were perfect that night, and I could feel the foot, and I was woke up bouncing on the bed, but then I was asked the question, are you sure you weren't dropped? And I thought, well, I suppose there was a possibility. The mountains were lined with silver. It was a clear night. The stars were bright. It was perfect element and all that sort of thing. But yet the room was haunted. I knew it was haunted. So, yeah, lots of different things do occur. You explained how I wake up bouncing on a bed. How the heck did that happen? How many people wake up bouncing on their bed? Not me, I guess. What's my husband doing? You'll be surprised that my husband is sleeping most of the time through these events while I'm being thrown around a room like a rag doll. He's calmly sleeping or knocked out, or they're not going to let him wake up. They're going to have their fun with me because they want me to write about it or have the experience. So I could go on for days.
Right. And, and it's true, that people will sleep through if they're not meant to experience it.
That's correct.
And wake up with no idea what's going on.
That's correct. That's correct.
But I will say, though, the interesting thing is, as much as like you talk, you're talking about it and sharing it, it's like there's more of a curiosity in your voice than I don't ever want to experience this again. And so it's like kind of like a mix of I almost feel like the way you talk with them, instead of saying, hey, don't surprise me like that again, go, hey, can you put me back a little easier next time? And see if you don't come back bouncing and come back laying in bed maybe, or and there are times that I wonder, as we're taken up into craft, have these experiences, and then we're brought back, do they remember where we were when we left? Because they have no measurement of time in my perspective. So could they have been thinking, oh, she wasn't in bed, she was over here at the chair, and that's why you were put in the chair, because they didn't realize, oh wait, we picked her up out of the bed, our bad.
Well, and try waking up once. This happened when I was younger. I woke up with a dress on, inside out, zipper, completely zipped up to my neck, backwards. You try figuring out how to unzip yourself in a long dress where the zipper is all the way up, and you're like, well, how the heck did I get back into this thing? And the thing is that people, it's hard to share stories about some of these things that happen because there's so many people that don't have these types of experiences. Some do, but some don't. And so it's not easy to have a conversation about, yeah, you know what happened to me last night around the water cooler? Yeah, I woke up with my dress on inside out backwards, and it took me like an hour to try to undo my zipper so I could get out of my dress. I mean, it's just really weird things that have happened. And so when you mention the curiosity part, I've always been curious because I'm not exactly sure what I'm dealing with at the time. Is it something spiritual? Is it something paranormal? I like to separate that from extraterrestrial, by the way, because it's easier for me. A lot of people want to put that extraterrestrial in the paranormal category, but I like to separate them and then go to the otherworldly or something along that lines. It's very strange. I talked with them and interviewed a guy on my show. He actually talked to a dead person that was dead for 9 years for 30 minutes. I said, well, how could that be? Because usually they can't hold their energy for a long period of time, right? And he said, no. He said, I had no idea. I thought the guy was alive. And then when I went to get his address in this office, because he had taken an interest in what I was doing, so he wanted to get it, resume the conversation, the guy said he's been dead for 9 years. He says, no, he wasn't. He was just out on the lawn talking to me. 30 minutes. And so that led me to another piece of curiosity. How long can something hold its energy for before it fizzles out? The human battery at the fair. Oh my God, that goes on for 2 weeks straight. That's an easy human battery there. But we wonder, what are we dealing with out here? So
that's very true. And one thing I like to say with the paranormal that, as we're growing as a community and awareness of things, is a little bit side of what you were saying, is have, the extraterrestrial, interdimensional, all these other options in the paranormal perspective, because if we're going to try and answer something, we need to look at everything. We can't just say, oh, it's got to fit these criteria or it's not a part of.
Right.
Because we're missing the boat. And what I was thinking about one day was, we watch Star Trek and, shows like that. And we're like, well, how do we make first contact? We study them first.
Yeah.
And then we make contact.
Yeah.
Well, who's to say the ETs aren't doing that, and the shadow beings or, apparitions that we see that don't make sense?
Yeah.
Could it be an ET trying to see what first contact would be like? How aware are we? Where are we at in our awareness? And we're misidentifying it and creating categories that don't really exist.
Right. That's right. I mean, at what point are we going to actually be definite at something that we're still trying to figure out? I mean, there's people I interview that feel like they've got things figured out, but then there's usually questions that go along with it. And then that extends to other questions that go along with that. And so, by the way, I did capture a very significant shadow being a year ago on my birthday in a now haunted historic train car. And the only thing that I was able to figure out was when you use your camera phones, put it on night mode, and it's usually around maybe 3200 ISO. And I just had a feeling. And so we were in there. It wasn't known as anything haunted. I just had a feeling. And this one, by the way, made my hometown newspaper. So it ended up in a number of places. But, I go boom, boom, boom. You know how you do that really quick. Sometimes you can't get it there, but you can get it. I call it right in the middle, that sandwich, that image. And so it was very interesting. It was facing my shadow. And from what I understand, shadows can't create shadows of themselves. And it's a long story, but I could make out, and I filtered it. It was some kind of a female, long brown hair, wearing a coat. But the question is how did she get in to that train car? It was a passenger train car that was then a dining car, but then it was a refurbished car. And so did the parts of something else that they brought in to bring it back to its glory days, did that have energy on that? And it was brought into that car. So there was questions even beyond whether or not it was ever there or if it was residual. It was another perfect night, by the way. It was clear. It was starry. It was perfect, for the elements. But, there are questions with that too. Can energy, yes, travel from places or pieces into other places and then now haunt it because it's part of that piece? I don't know. It's interesting.
It is. And it raises the interesting point of, there are paranormal investigators who like to say, well, this spirit is stuck here.
Mm.
I'm like, it's energy.
Yeah.
How is it stuck here?
No.
Is it in a room of mirrors? In which case, yeah, it could be stuck because that's a trap.
Yeah.
Or if it's just open space, I'm like, how is it trapped? Energy can go where it wants. It's choosing to be here. It's not stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What's your perspective? Do spirits actually get stuck, or is that a misinformation?
No, there was a mirror in that hallway, but I don't know what the age of it was. I know that silver-lined mirrors have a tendency to absorb and can take in some of this energy better than some of these newly created mirrors, although that's what I've been told. I'm not sure if that's fact. Are they stuck? I'm not sure. When that gal or whatever it was showed up in the hallway, I wasn't expecting it. I knew if something felt off in the hallway, it was pitch black. That's why I put my thing on night mode and I started click, 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 click to see if there was something in there. And when I captured it, my heart, this is the other thing I can tell you about investigating. Just because you've had, like me, 100+ experiences from this to that or whatever, doesn't mean that you don't still become scared and taken back and frightened at what you captured. because when I captured that, I was shaking, going back into the other area where my husband was. And I said, here, look at this. My God. And I have been in this field forever, and yet I still get frightened. And so it's hard to say about energy, whether sometimes it's residual or the elements and things line up just right, so it allows them to manifest in some way, or if they're hiding in the mirror. I don't know where the mirror came from, you know what I mean? But it was in the hallway, and that's a good place. They like to go in and out of that mirror. People don't realize that. So I'm not a big fan of mirrors anymore, because it seems like they're portals to something. So I've had that. So, yeah.
Well, if you ever want to research mirrors, Myrtle's Plantation.
Oh, I can talk about that one.
A famous mirror that it's mercury glass and has been replaced 8 times. Yeah. And in the exact spot, the handprint appears.
Yeah. That mirror, yes, you just hit it. I was waiting for you to say that. I was on a tour. We were told that mirror is not even period to that house. They got it at a garage sale or one of 8 times. They get them at garage sales. They get them from somewhere else. But it is interesting about that handprint or that image, And so a lot of times, even in these bed and breakfasts that I stay in, those artifacts and stuff that are in there, they're not even period to the home. They go and they get them so they can make the ambiance appear more of the period of the time. And so, like with this train car, they had to find some replacement parts. And so who knows if something was brought into it from a replacement part from something else that happened somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Like an asylum, mirror from an asylum brought into the train.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be anywhere. But I wasn't going to talk to the owner about it. They weren't home at the time. And the last thing you want to do is ruin somebody's business. So, because if people are afraid of that, people either go to that and they're very popular, or people are afraid of that and they don't want anything to do with that at all. And by the way, it was calling my name. And on my birthday, that was my present. So and we had Northern Lights that night. And so that's why when we're talking about energy and things really lighting up and everything, the conditions were right for some type of manifestation, but I wasn't expecting that at all. But it's a remarkable capture. So
it is. And talking about phone cameras for a second, I just had a thought pop in my head, because we're trained as investigators. You take at least 3 photos in sequential order.
Yeah.
But camera phones now have burst mode.
Yep. So
is it better to use the burst mode or to still do the 3 individual pictures?
I did both. When I can answer that also from another perspective. When I started out with I call it the sandwich effect, I used a disposable camera. Click, 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 and was able to capture things on a high ISO film, did a disposable camera. That was years ago. And that's when I started learning about orb energy and stuff like that. And so I think anything that's manifesting and the right place, the right time, whatever, not everyone's going to capture the same thing. Could my husband have used his phone and captured the same thing? I can answer that too. I used to be a professional wedding photographer. I'm still a professional photographer. If you have a filter on your camera or your cameras, some of those are going to filter out some of that type of stuff. You got the dust and this and that and whatever, and the droplets. Okay, very good at picking that up. But there's some things that aren't dust and droplets and this and that and whatever. And sometimes the filter and on your camera or whatever it's made of can also filter those things out. So my husband, if he would have taken pictures like that, I would bet you he would have captured probably nothing. right place, right time. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's timing in the 3 photos where, the phone processes it, stores it, and says, okay, we're ready for the next one. So there is time for whatever's going by to appear or not appear in the 3 photos. But then I look at burst mode, and it's like you're taking 30 photos in like a second. And so if it's in the middle photo, are you going to get it in the burst mode because you're getting 30 images of the first photo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is that a benefit? I don't know. It creates a quandary because you're like, how many burst photos do you need to equal these 3?
No, that's a good point. And also along that lines, not always will you be successful. I think there's a lot of elements that have to line up. I'm used to doing the click, I don't think I had the burst once. And yes, I agree with you. All you get is the same image 30 times in a row. And it's like, well, that got nothing, right? But it's timing, right? So I don't know. Yeah. I do the click, hoping that if something's going to show, that my timing is such that I can get it. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And then real quick, do you think Apple inventing the motion photo was a benefit or a hindrance to the paranormal?
Oh, I think that's considering things that, are you talking in terms of making a still picture, all of a sudden be able to move and turn to somebody and smile and do whatever?
I'm referring to, like, say I was to take a photo of you right now, you would be still to the photo, but when I look at the photo, you're actually moving.
Yeah. I did the AI thing. Actually, they were promoting this thing on Facebook or something, and for some reason they I think they grabbed the picture from my Facebook or something like that, and so I actually watched myself what they did with it, and I about laughed my head off. Sometimes these things don't do a good service of anything because you really don't want to sit and make a moment that really never occurred. I mean, I'm a someone who believes in being authentic for the moment. And here you have these 2 people sitting there, and then all of a sudden they're looking at each other, or they turn to each other and they start kissing each other. Well, how do you not know that 5 seconds before that they're just saying, "Stay your distance. I don't want you in my shot." I mean, it's kind of like creating a false narrative. I think that's what I'm getting at, of what's really happening in that picture. And so I don't like the idea, especially when I saw what they did with my still face. I'm like, oh yeah, right. I don't look like that with my side view, not even close, very interesting though. Unfortunately, the way it's going right now, it seems like unless there's a kibosh on it in some degree, it's going to actually probably cause some interesting issues in the future if it hasn't already. So,
yeah, I agree. And so thank you for your coming on and for your time and sharing everything with us.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely have to have you back on because, like you said, there is so much more that we could delve into. But before I say goodbye to everybody, do you want to promote your books and anything coming up for you?
Well, sure. You can find my books on Amazon. I would say the best books right now that are out is Phenomena and Unexplained Happenings. That's the one. And Haunted Life. And then there's also Manifestations and Message Received. Those 4 books are my top sellers. And they've got lots of stories, lots of insight, lots of questions and all that sort of thing. And if you really want to look me up to a larger degree, go to my website, www.paranormal paranormaluniversalpress.com, and you'll get a good look at what my life started out so simple, and now look at how it's evolved to a point that who knows what's next. So, but thank you for having me on. Actually, it's been really fun.
Yes, and before I cut to the outro and say goodnight, I want to say from my heart and the heart of my shows, thank you for what you're doing for the community, not just the paranormal, not the extraterrestrial, but all of them, because it's seen and your sharing is making a difference. So thank you.
No, thank you. I can say the same back. Thanks so very much.
This night has not disappointed. I think I even was wowed more than I thought I would be, and your experiences just were like, wow, not what I expected. I kind of had an idea, but it was so much more. And so thank you, and I'm glad we created a space where you could share it more openly and not just be like, okay, it was A, B, C, and try to get through everything. So thank you.
No, thank you. Believe me, there's plenty more where that came from, and interesting ones too. So,
as I said to you before, I don't think you have a dull story.
Well, I don't know. They're not, one thing I'll tell you truthfully, they are not embellished. They are as I say they are. I'm just a little dramatic when I say them, but there are some very interesting situations that no one is ever going to be able to tell me that it's something. No, it's not in my head. I live this, and maybe I will have a movie made of me at some point, but I have to be real creative and real interesting,
And how would you condense your entire life down to an hour and a half to 3 hours movie?
Oh, I'd have to have sequels, I'd have to have a series. And what's happening in her world next, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy 2026.
Yep, and I'll be in touch with you.
I look forward to it, and thank you. And with that, we are going to say goodnight, everybody.
Yep. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.